What's up, guys? ArtistVersion1 here, and welcome back to episode 2 of Stories No One Asked For, the podcast. And thank you guys very much for tuning in to the very first episode. Nice to know that you guys just want to sit and listen to me talk. Pretty soon here we will be having some guests on. Like I've mentioned, Jackie's going to be on. I have another friend, my friend Amber from high school in North Carolina, who wants to come on. Of course, Nick from the Three-Way Dance 107 podcast wants to come on and tell you guys a story that nobody asked for. But I figured tonight it's going to be a solo again. So, I was trying to find my list of stories that I actually had planned for the second book, but that list kind of just went missing. So I'm gonna kind of wing it here, and tonight we're gonna make it a blockbuster night. That's right. Some of these stories, one of which was predominantly featured in my book, Stories No One Asked For, but I know not everybody has a copy of the book. And some of these I may have told on previous lives and everything like that, and some of which I don't think I've ever told here. So first, I'm going to give you guys a little couple appetizers. For those of you, if you've been living under a rock like ever, Blockbuster Video was a chain of video rental stores. I think from, I want to say 84 to 2009. Isn't that when they went out? No. Yeah, 2009. No, because I was living in Illinois, so it had to be. It was Texas. So yeah, 2009 had to be 2009, 2010, somewhere in there. Currently, there's only one remaining Blockbuster Video in existence. That is the one in Bend, Oregon. And for those of you curious as to why those still exist, is because the franchise stores were able to still carry on past the bankruptcy and Chapter 11, all that good stuff. So if you're able to continue business, that's why. And that's why the Bend, Oregon one, I think, is still in business, because they are technically a franchise store, not a corporate store. So just fun fact there. What my job was at Blockbuster, when I was initially hired, I was what the hell was my job title? Customer service rep. That's what it was, customer service rep. I mainly just dealt with customers, put movies back on the shelves, help customers with basic needs, such like that. I eventually moved up to shift lead, which I will talk about here. But working in a place where you have to talk to a lot of customers, you come across a lot of customer, interactions. And I'm going to get to some of them. And plus you have a lot of inner work, interactions as well. I worked in what Blockbuster literally described as an urban store. We predominantly dealt with African American, Hispanic customers, and that is true. I mean, every now and then a white person would come in. I was like, my people, but the bad thing to that is that, like, whenever something went wrong, like if I did something wrong and I found out about it later, it was always easy to tell who did it, because they'd come to me and be like, well, this and this and this happened. I'm like, how do you know it was me? And they're like, they said the white guy did it. I'm like, fuck. So like when we hired another white person, we hired this lady named Lisa. Lisa was cool as shit. And we hired her. So like they came to me one day and they were just like, well, this and this and this happened. I was like, how do you know it was me? And they were just like, well, they said the white person did it. I was like, I'm not the only white person here anymore. You better take that shit to Lisa. Make sure it wasn't her, because it sure as hell wasn't me. So, so some of these stories, I will break down, what the hell, some of this shit means and everything. So I will give you guys some appetizers first. Let me get a sip of this drink. Now this one, I know I've told before, but it bears repeating. So, one of my first jobs, or one of like first responsibilities I had being at Blockbuster, we had this thing called Active Seller. And what Active Seller was is that you would stand at the door and greet customers as they come in. So it's not like right at the door where you're like in their fucking face, but like, they'd walk in, you're like, hey, welcome to Blockbuster, shit like that. And like, hey, have you heard about our rewards program? Have you heard about our movie pass? Da, 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 da. Plus you'd carry a couple movies on you and shit. So they're like, hey, you have a copy of that movie that just came out? And you're like, bam, right there. And they're like, oh, fuck, you rule and shit like that, So, plus, if anybody needed any help, they come to you, you take them to whatever they're looking for, da da da. So one night, a couple's in there, and they come to me, and they're just like, we're looking for this movie, but we don't know what it's called. I was like, well, what's it about? What can I help you with? They're like, we don't know what it's about. We saw the commercial for it, And all my husband remembers is a big green guy smashing a car. And I'm like, gotcha. Hulk, follow me. And they're like, no, it's not Hulk. And I'm like, what? Like, what what other movie could it be? Like, what other big green guy could there be smashing a car than Hulk? You know? They're like, no, it's not Hulk. And I'm like, are you sure? You know, like, that's the only movie that matches that description. They're like, no. I was like, can you give me something else? Who's in it then? Or something like that? They're like, no, we only saw like a glimpse of the commercial and it was a big green guy smashing a car. And I'm like, the fuck? So, being the active seller, I had a second. So I walk up and down the action aisle. You know, so I'm just like, all right, maybe something will jump out at me. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't know, you know? And I'm like, big green guy smash car. I'm looking at every fucking movie I could possibly think of, man. I'm like, no. What the hell is it? And I go back up and they're just like, did you find it? I'm like, are you sure it's not the Hulk? You know? And they're like, no, it's not the Hulk. It has a big green guy smashing a car. And I'm like, the Hulk. Like, like I'm almost in tears because I'm just like, what other movie could match this description? You know, I'm like, do you know a director? Do you know a fucking best boy or a key grip? Which, you know, best boy is somebody who helps the key grip of lights. Just so we're clear here. You know, that shows you how, like, fucking depraved the fucking, like, information I needed for this movie. And they're like, no, all we know is about a big green guy smashing a car. And I'm like, oh my god, this must be one epic fucking scene because, like, they saw this little clip and they have to see this movie. So I'm like, let me go take another look, man. So I'm looking up action again, you know, and, you know, I take a look at horror just in case. You know, and I'm like, man, and usually I'm pretty good. You can give me like minimal information on a movie and I can somehow get to where you're going with it. You know, but this one, I'm lost. You know, I'm like, I don't know. The only thing I'm getting is the Hulk. You know, so I'm going back up, about to just scream at these people, it's the Hulk! You're going to watch the Hulk tonight. I come back up. And they're fucking shits and giggles, their smiles and everything. And they're like, we figured it out. And I'm like, oh, this I can't wait to hear. And I was like, oh, what movie was it? Hellboy. Now, for those of you at home that have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about, the Hulk features a big, giant, green, guy, whereas Hellboy is red. And there is a commercial out there somewhere where he's smashing a car with his fucking hand. But still, like, those are two entirely different colors. Oh my god. And people used to come in with that minimal amount of information. I used to be able to get there. They'd be like, do you have that one with that guy who was in that movie out last year? I'm like, oh, fuck, McHale's Navy. I'd be able to get there. But like this one, I'm just like, fuck, if it ain't the Hulk, I don't know what the hell it is. But also, people would come in and they'd want your recommendations, They'd be like, oh, what's out this week? And you tell them what's out and shit. So I'll never forget this one guy. This guy came in, and the way he worded it, too, is what got me. The way he worded it, like, I was like, again, I'm being an active seller, so I'm just like, is there anything I can help you find? And he's just like, I don't really know. And he looks at me dead in the eye and he said, what's a movie you like? That's how he worded it. What's a movie you like? And I'm kind of taking a quick look. And, the movie just came out. The movie The Lake House just came out with Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. And I thought it was a pretty decent flick. I was just like, you know what? I'll throw the fucking Lake House out there. I was like, and I pointed right to it. I was like, the Lake House wasn't too bad. And he looks over at the Lake House. And he looks back over at me like I just said, hey, would you like to suck my cock tonight? And I'm just like, what? He's like, man, that's a girl movie. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you just asked me to name a movie I liked. Don't ask me for recommendations if you're going to get fucking mad at him. And another recommendation story, I didn't have this one written down on my notes tonight, so I remember this as I was talking. But this lady used to come in, and I only remember her because she had huge tits. That's the only reason I remember. So she came in one night and she was like, what's a good horror movie that's out right now? And at the time, the remake with Camilla Bell, When a Stranger Calls was out. I really dug that flick. You know, I thought it was dope. So I told her, I was like, When a Stranger Calls, I thought was really good. And she was like, yeah, was it good? I was like, I liked it. And she was like, okay, I'm going to get it. So she gets it. She came back the fucking next day livid. You know, she was like, this movie was terrible. I was like, what? You didn't like it? She was like, no, this movie was awful. Da 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 da. And I was like, why? What was the matter with it? She was just like, it was just boring. And then you never find out who the stranger is. I'm like, that's kind of the whole point of the movie. And she was like, yeah, but I thought we were gonna find out who it was. I'm like, if it was called When Johnny Calls, I would kind of understand. But it's called When a Stranger Calls. She was like, I'm not listening to your recommendations anymore. You know, she wasn't like malicious with it, but you know, and the new releases always came out Tuesday, and every Tuesday we would get calls from customers who would be like, hey, what came out today? So you'd be like, oh, this, and this. And you're like, right on, cool. And every now and then, and if we liked it, we'd hold a movie for you. Like I had a customer named Miss Doe, and Mrs. Doe was hot. To this day, I still wonder what Miss Doe's doing. I swear, that's how hot she is. You know? So Miss Doe would call and be like, oh, can you hold this and this for me? I'm like, you got it, Miss Doe. I'll hold anything you want for you. So, but some people would want to call and just want to fucking quiz you. Like, it was like the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire fucking movies over the phone, man. So, I remember getting this call one day. Now, by this time, I'm a manager. So, like, I'm, like, in charge. So, I get a call. I'm like, thank you for calling Blockbuster. This is William. How can I help you? And she's like, hi, can you tell me what came out today? Okay, we're starting off okay. So, she tells me, I tell her, I was like, this, and this. And the movie Transamerica, you know, that movie with Felicity Huffman came out. And she was like, Transamerica? What's that? Yeah, okay. I don't mind telling you a quick little synopsis of the movie. I was like, oh, Transamerica, it's about a man who wants to become a woman, you know, and such like that. And she goes, oh, okay. Who's in that? And I was like, man, come on now. I was like, Felicity Huffman is in that. She was like, what's she in? I'm like, oh, God. We're going deeper down this rabbit hole, man. You know? So I was like, she's on the TV show Desperate Housewives. So then she's like, what's Desperate Housewives? I was like, can you hold on a minute? I put the phone on hold. Never heard that call again. Because I'm like, listen, you want to call and ask me what's out? That's cool. Hell, I'll even give you a quick synopsis of one of the ones you want. But like, I'm not here to play 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon of the fucking movie you want. Okay? All right, so those are like some quick little like instances I had here. So now I'm going to get into like, some other shit. Now, I had a boss that fucking, oh God, some days we would get along perfectly. We would have like a good old fun time, especially like once I became a manager, it became a little bit easier, except towards the end. Because we would do what was called the map every Monday. And what the map was, every Monday they'd be like, okay, we want you to move these movies over to this shelf and this movie over here, and then we want you to move this. So basically how they want the store mapped out. And every Monday it would change, for Tuesday. Shit. So it just got to a point where like me and 2 other employees, we just got tired of being talked to like we're fucking garbage. Like I would literally like come in and just be like waiting to clock in and everything, and I would get talked to like I'm fucking trash. Like I'd be looking at like a game for sale. Just like looking at it, just waiting to clock in. I'd have like a Hawaiian shirt on over my fucking uniform and shit. And she'd be like, you ain't gonna buy that, put it back. And I'm like, I was just looking at it, but okay. Just shit like that, and I can understand your boss, you gotta have a little bit of authority and shit like that, but like, damn, there's a certain way to talk to people and a certain way not to talk to people. And like, I'd probably say 80% of the time she hit the way not to talk to people, So I think the final straw one day was, it was me, I was just, no, this is a little bit ways off of becoming a manager. So I was still a customer service rep, and I was working with this girl named Felicia. And Felicia was what were they called? Shift leader. And at the time, we were having a really bad problem with voids. Voids is where somebody, obviously we scan something. They're like, oh, I don't want that. And we have to scan it. We're having a real big problem with that. Blockbuster didn't like that. So it got so bad to the point where whenever we did a void, we had to call our manager at home and say, hey, we're doing a void for this much, And she didn't want us doing that. So, customer comes up, rents a movie. They're like, oh, I don't want that. Fuck. So I call my boss. Hey, I'm doing a void for $4.32. Why? They didn't want the movie. Well, you got to tell them the price before they rent it. Okay. Click. Hang up. Literally 2 customers later. Now, video games were a different fucking story. Video games were $8.32 per rental. So guy comes up, rents the video game. I'm like, all right, total today is going to be $8.32. What? It's that much to rent a game? Never mind. Fuck. So I call my boss. I was like, hey, I'm doing a void for $8.32. Why? He didn't like the price of the game. Didn't I tell you have to tell the prices of people? You need to start doing your job. Click. Uh-huh. So, we take care of that, and another customer comes up, and they had like a coupon and shit, and the coupon didn't work right and everything. Anyway, it boiled down to being a void, and I was like, I'm not calling her again for a void. I was like, I refuse. And the customer's just like, what the hell's going on? And I was like, I have to void it. And they're just like, well, that's okay. I was like, no, you don't understand. It's not okay. And they're like, so what are you going to do? I was like, I'll just pay for it. Here. And I pulled money out of my own fucking pocket. And I paid for it. They're like, no, you don't have to do that. I was like, no, yes, I do. And I paid for their rental and shit. Now I'm distraught because, like, I'm just getting yelled at for doing my job when, like, shit, over 2 voids. So Felicia sees that I'm upset. And she's like, Will, why don't you go take your break? Why don't you go sit in the back and chill for a bit? I was like, right on. So I'm sitting in the back, and literally like 5 minutes later, it couldn't have been more than 5 minutes, Felicia busts through the damn back room door, crying. She was like, I'm just tired of this shit. I'm like, what the hell's going on? She was like, I had to call Latanya with a void, and she started yelling at me and everything like that. And I was like, that's exactly what happened to me. She was like, this is fucking bullshit. I'm tired of this shit. So like, I wasn't the only one getting yelled at and shit. So we call in our district manager. We had a private meeting with him. So it was me, Felicia, and this other guy. Basically told him all the shit that she does that we don't like. Like if we're doing like a simple thing and we get yelled at, yada, 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 all this shit. So here's the fun fact to this. They took what we said very seriously, and they said, okay, you know what? We're going to have to let her go. If these 3 employees are coming to us and saying like, this is what she's doing, we're going to have to let her go. Here's what happened though. This is how we got our boss fired, hired, transferred, and retransferred within the span of an hour. So about a week after they have this meeting with us, saying like, this is what she does, we don't like the way we're talked to, blah, 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 all this shit. I get a message saying they're like, hey, they're going to let her go. And I'm just like, oh, okay, well, shit, fucking A, right on. And then I get another message that just says, okay, they're not going to let her go. They're just going to transfer her to another store. I was like, all right, whatever, fuck. As long as she ain't here, it doesn't bother me, No, it was fired. That's what it was. They fired her. They officially fired her. Like, she was gone. They told her, hey, you're let go. And then they said, okay, no, you can come back, but we're going to transfer you to another store. And I'm like, okay, fine, as long as she's not at this store. Then they're just like, okay, fine, you can come back to your store. Like, what? Wait, what happened? What happened was they reached out to another manager at another store and said, hey, we're letting go of her. We want you to come in and run this store. And she was like, oh, no, I can't take that store from her like that. That would be wrong and everything. So that's why the transfer didn't work out. So they just said, fuck it, put her back in the store. So, like, now we're all, like, sweating bullets and shit because we're like, oh, fuck. Because not only did they fire her, rehire her, transfer her and then put her back in the same store, she's going to be fucking aiming for one of us, you know? And thankfully nothing ever came for that, because she could have easily came for all three of us, because she probably knew it was one of us, if not all three of us. Definitely me, because again, me and her didn't see eye to eye a lot. So yeah. But it was funny because like I said, she noticed that I did my job, because eventually Felicia would leave. She was like, fuck this shit, I'm out of here, So this is literally, I swear to God, how I became fucking manager. So Felicia left, I'm still just customer service rep and everything. I used to come in usually like 8 to 3, something like that, maybe 9 to 3, Again, I usually did the putbacks, returns is what we call them. I usually did the returns, dealt with customers, shit like that. We did something, oh God, we did this thing called FOS. FOS was called Found on Shelf. And I fucking hated it because it was so long and tedious. What Found on Shelf was, it was a list of movies that were said that were checked out by customers. Okay? Well, sometimes when you scan movies in, sometimes you might miss one. It's plausible. So then they'd be like, okay, here's this copy of Click that says it belongs to Joe Smith. It's copy number 216. All right? Well, we might have 400 copies of Click. Now I have to go to the wall and look through all 400 copies of Click to look for number 216. And if it's on the wall, that means it's here. We can check it in, and we don't charge Joe Smith. Whereas if it's not there, we continue to charge them up the ass. Shit like that. I would come in and do all that shit. Make the phone calls to make sure all the phone numbers were correct. That was pretty much, I was pretty much doing all the shift lead work, minus the fucking, like, closing the actual store and, like, counting money and shit like that. So, my boss comes to me one day. This is no shit how it happened. Okay, I swear to God. She goes, hey, Will, have you ever thought about being a shift lead? And I looked at her and I was like, I mean, I thought about it, but I'd probably never do it. And she was like, okay, we'll start training you Monday. I'm like, wait, what? Huh? I just said I wouldn't. What the fuck? And that's literally how I became a manager. And then that Monday, I'll be damned, I was training. And like some of the shit, oh my God, some of the shit in this training manual, I wish we had like the high-tech camera phones we have now. Because like if I could record some of the shit that was in the training videos for Blockbuster, it was like, this is no shit. I'll never forget this. This is one of the things in the training videos for Blockbuster Video. It was just like, here at Blockbuster, we treat everybody equally, and it was just like, here, is this the correct way? Or what was it? How do they word it? Okay, I just said I'd never forget it. But it was like, is it okay to call Carlos at work a spick? And I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, yes, of course it is, but still, no, I'm kidding. But like, that's the kind of question that they wouldn't sugarcoat the question. Like, that's the kind of shit that fucking amazed me when I was training to be a manager for this fucking job and shit. It was unreal. So while I was, this is while I was manager. Yeah, okay. So while I was manager, okay, we had this girl that worked with us, and she started off fine. Her name was Kiki, and she started off fine, had no issues with her and shit. She did her job fine, but then she was one of those ghetto ass girls who she would run her mouth, and she would just run it just a little bit too much and shit, and that's when we started butting heads a little bit. Well, it came to a head one day because we would do store meetings every now and then. Now, at the time, my mom was the manager of a Blockbuster at a different Blockbuster, like nearby, So instead of doing like separate store meetings, to make it easier, we combined our store meetings. So we had our store go to my mom's store, and we just did all the meetings together. So, my mom's store is there, and, my mom's people knew me. They knew me like the back of my fucking hand. And vice versa and shit. So we're there, we're doing the meeting. Now, during the meeting, you guys know me as Will, artist, whatever. My mom refers to me by my middle name. Okay? And I bet you're wondering, what's your middle name? There's a reason why I don't say it. Okay? Well, my mom refers to me by my middle name in this meeting. And she knows that, like, when I, like, tell my friends my name and shit, she knows I say Will, William, whatever. So right away, she fucking like, oh, and by the way, I call him that. You guys know him as William. Only I call him that. Da 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 da. So the meeting goes on and on and on, and the meeting ends and shit. So somebody brought donuts to the meeting, you know. So I go over to the donut box, and I can still like see it vividly in my head. So I pick up this donut, and it has like pink frosting on it, and I'm like, right on. So I take a bite out of this donut. Kiki's standing at about, I don't know, 10 feet from me, and she's like, so, and says the middle name, and I just look at her, you know. I didn't respond, you know. And she was like, so, what are we going to do? And she says my middle name again. And I'm like, didn't you just hear her say that I don't like to be called that? You know? And she was like, so, I'm just calling you by your name. And said it again. Now she's backed up some. She's like by the exit door. And I'm still standing here with this donut in my fucking hand. You know? And I'm trying to hold it all in. I'm just like, I'm going to snap. You know? And she was just like, I don't know what the big deal is. I'm just calling you by your name. And, it, you know, said it again. And again, I know it's something so trivial. But again, I don't really like being referred to by my middle name. You know? Call me Will, call me William and shit like that. But my middle name, there's a reason why I don't tell people my middle name. You know? You have to be extremely, extremely close to me to know my middle name. You know? So finally, Kiki, like, starts waving her arms around like, you know, fucking we can go and everything like that, you know? And I was like, we can go because you just heard her say, don't call me by my fucking middle name? Now everybody's looking. You know, my mom's looking like, what the hell's going on? You know, everybody's looking. Because at first it was like just between me and her. But because I fucking snapped, now everybody's like, can see it. You know? Now she's waving her arms by the door like, oh, well, we can go and everything. I was like, fucking game on. Because, like, all I needed was a fucking reason. And this was my reason. So this donut I had in my hand, I throw it down. You know, the only time that I'll ever throw down a fucking donut. And I start walking towards the door. Because I was like, if she wants to fucking go, we're going to fucking go. If she wants to get ghetto fabulous, let's get ghetto fabulous, man. Let's do this, man. We had this kid that worked for us named George. Like, you know, 17-year-old Hispanic kid, he stepped in the way. And he was just like, dude, it ain't worth it, man. You know, and Felicia, who was still there at the time. So I wasn't manager yet. Felicia, and we had this other assistant manager there, Brenda, Felicia and Brenda grabbed this Kiki by each arm and just dragged her out the door. Because they fucking knew my ass was going to come. Because they saw the look in my eye, and it was just one of those things where just like, you know, like once they dragged her out the door, and this kid George was just like, dude, it just wasn't worth it, man. I was like, I'm just, you know, it was, you know, it was like one of those things where like I was tongue tied, you know. My mom was like, what the hell was that about? I was like, she kept calling me by my middle name. You know, and I kept telling her to stop and shit. And she was like, oh, okay, you know. And she was like, I told her not to do it. I was like, I know, she didn't listen. You know? So, like, I mean, if George didn't step in the way there, this story would have a way different ending. You know? Eventually she would go on to quit. You know, I outlasted her and everything. But, like, she just doesn't know how close it came that day. You know? But like, and Brenda and Felicia, same thing. They knew. That's why they grabbed her by each of her arms and dragged her out the door. Because they knew if I got past George, shit was gonna go down. You know? So, now, when I was manager, I kind of made some decisions that, or I made a decision that probably wasn't a good one. It almost led to me being fired. And that was, see, Blockbuster, Netflix was just coming out. Or I wouldn't say coming out, because they've been around since like, what, 97, 98, something like that. So they were like really starting to get into the fucking game. You know what I mean? This is like right before they started doing streaming and shit. So like DVDs through the mail was like fucking hot. So Blockbuster, they're like, well, fuck, we're Blockbuster. We have a retail store and shit. Fuck, let's get into DVDs in the mail. So, but our niche was, okay, Netflix, you got to put them in the mailbox, wait 3 days for your next one, and shit like that. Whereas Blockbuster's catch was, hey, you rent them online, you bring your envelopes to the store, use that envelope to get a free rental, we mail them back, boom, you have a movie while you wait. Like, that was our catch and shit. So, like, every night when you close, I'd have to go to, like, a fucking mailbox and, like, drop off, like, hundreds of fucking online envelopes and shit. It was a pain in the ass. So, me and this kid here, Donnie, and Donnie, I'll tell another story about Donnie later, but Donnie was, like, fucking my right-hand man. Like, if I was on a night working with Donnie, I knew shit was going to go smooth, man, except for one night. But, like, I knew working with Donnie, that shit was going to go smooth. Sometimes you'd get people who'd come in, and, they come with their envelope, and they're like, oh, I can return these here, right? And we're like, yeah, you sure can. And they're like, okay, here you go. And I'm like, wait, you get a free rental with it. Don't you want to use your rental? They're like, no, I just want to make sure it gets dropped off here. And you're like, right on. So what me and or Donnie would do, we would put that envelope to the side to the end of the night. And then, like, hey, we're about to close the door. You want to rent something? So then we'd rent something and we'd use that customer's, like, envelope for the free rental, check it in, and then throw it in the mailbox. That's. So, at the time, I don't know if Donnie had one. I know I had a Blockbuster online pass for 3 movies at a time. So, but every now and then, somebody would come in with an envelope, like, here you go, oh, you don't want to rent? No? Okay, so I'd push that to the side. End of the night comes, oh, here we go, here's an envelope, I'll get something else. Boom, so forth and so forth. So, one day, the auditor came in. Now, the auditor is what they say. They come in, they make sure all of our money's right. They make sure, all of the fucking standards and practices and all that shit's right. They check all the rental histories, make sure, we're not fucking, shorting the drawers or anything like that. And she gets to my history, and all of a sudden she's like, Will. I was like, yeah. She was like, how many movies are on your online pass? I was like, 3. And she was like, can you explain to me why there's 6? Like 6 returns here? Now, there is some half-truth to what I'm about to say. What I told her was, I was like, oh, there's 6 because I rented 3, and those 3 never showed up. So I let Blockbuster Online know, and they sent me another 3. So the next day I got them. Then the next day after that, they sent me the same 3. So I had 6 of them. Which, that is true. That is legitimately true. Because when it came to Blockbuster Online, you could just be like, hey, I never got this movie. They send you another one. No fucking questions asked. Like, you could just fucking, I can't tell you how many movies I got from doing that. A lot. Fucking a lot. A lot. Anyway. So, she's like, okay. So, what about these 3? These are like done the next night. And I was just like, I forgot which story I came up with, to be honest, but I came up with some story that sounded good. And she kind of looked at me for a second, and then she printed out my rental history. Now, in theory, that doesn't sound too bad, but when the auditor finds something in your history and prints out the history, you're fucked. And that goes for anybody. If she would have printed out anybody's history, more than likely that person's fucked. So I know at this point I'm going to get fired. It's already signed. So, like, I'm calling my mom. I was like, hey, just let you know I'm going to get fired. I'm going to put in my 2-week notice. She was like, what? What'd you do? And I told her what I did. And she was like, no, don't put in your notice. I was like, why? She was like, it'll make you look even more guilty. I'm like, so I got to sit around and wait for them to fire me? And she was just like, just wait. And I'm like, okay. So about a week goes by. haven't fucking touched an online fucking envelope, you know. So my boss comes to me, and we're kind of like, I think we're doing FOS, we're doing found on shelf. And then she was like, oh, Will, I wanted to talk to you. I was like, what's up? And she was like, well, I just wanted to let you know that they're not going to fire you. And I start to play stupid. You know, I was like, fire me for what? And she was like, quit playing with me. I was like, okay. Like, I snapped out of it real quick. You know, I was just like, fire me for what? Quit playing. All right. Because they apparently found so many other people at other stores doing the same thing that they're like, well, if we fire him, we have to fire everybody else. So she was just like, all right, they're not going to fire you, you know, but like, don't do it anymore. Okay. And I was like, all right, well, and I was like, what did they classify it as? She was like, they classified it as stealing. I'm like, how is it stealing when they're still getting to where they're going? You know, it's not like I was taking them home and watching them. She was like, I don't know, Will, just don't do it anymore. I'm like, all right, fair enough. So that one almost got me fucking fired. That was like the only time that, I think that was the closest I ever came to actually being fired. You know? I think there was like a couple like headbutts I had with my fucking manager that maybe she could have been like, oh, fuck you, I'll fire you, you know? But, now, I'll save that one for later. Now this one, was a customer run-in. And I'm pretty sure if my boss was there, she probably... No, you know what? I think she would have sided with me on this one. Because she, like I said, even though we butted heads sometimes, we saw eye to eye on some shit. You know, like a customer came in and just started fucking yelling at me one day. And I didn't fucking do anything. You know? I didn't fucking do a word. I didn't do one thing to him. And she actually stuck up for me. So I was actually fucking stunned. I was taken aback by that. You know? So, anyway, this customer comes in one night. Now, this is when I'm in charge. I'm running the shift. I'm in charge, et cetera, et cetera. So this guy comes up with his wife. I'm assuming his wife. And they have 4 movies, I think. 4 movies. And I was like, okay, do you have a membership card? They're like, no, but we used to rent here. I'm like, okay, cool. What's your phone number? So I put their phone number in. And it comes up that, yeah, they've rented here, but it's been a while. Now... if you don't rent, or if you didn't rent, I should say, if you didn't rent at a Blockbuster within a 3-month period, it kicked you out of the system. But I could put you back into the system with what we called a quick ad. Now, when you fill out a Blockbuster membership application, it's like a long piece of paper. You got to put your name, address, all the fucking typical shit, all this shit that you got to put on here. Whereas with the quick ad, I just need a credit card number. Because we need a credit card number in case, like, fucking they run with the movies and shit like that. We can charge them. We need their name, address, and phone number. That's it. The application one, we need, like, a little bit more shit. So I was like, okay, since it's been 3 months since you rented here, I'm just going to need you to fill this out. It's a quick ad. Now, for some reason, the quick ad had Social Security number on it. I don't know why. No one's ever explained it to me. So, as I'm saying, oh, and by the way, you don't need to put Social Security number. They're just like, well, we're not giving you our Social Security number. I'm like, yeah, I know. That's why I'm saying you don't have to give it to me. So they fill out the name and shit. And then they're just like, well, we're not giving you a credit card. And I was like, well, I need a credit card in order to let you rent. They're like, well, why? I was like, I'm not saying that you will, but if for some reason you were to rent these movies and run, we have a way to charge you for them. And they're just like, well, we're not giving you a credit card. And I was like, then I can't let you rent tonight. And they're just like, this is fucking bullshit, And I was just like, I'm sorry. And I'm trying to take it as best as I can. I'm just explaining the rules to him. And he was kind of, I wouldn't say he was a big guy, but he was a scary looking guy, if that makes sense. So, throws the movies at me, which I'm like, right on. So, as he's walking out the door, he's fucking cussing me and everything. Like, this is fucking bullshit. I'll fucking go to Hollywood Video. Which that was always their favorite fucking, every customer's favorite fucking thread. I'll go to Hollywood Video. Yeah, you do that. So, as he's walking out, the only thing I could think to do was laugh. So as he's walking out, I'm like, he mocks me on his way out the door. And for some reason, that triggered me. It fucking triggered me for some reason. So I was just like, you know what? Nah. So I yell. I was like, and don't come back. Thinking like, he'll just keep walking to his car. Be like, fuck that fat ass, whatever. Oh, I was wrong on this one. because I was like, and don't come back. He fucking whipped that door back open and came back in and was like, what did you say? And I'll admit it right here in front of everybody. I'll admit it right here. I bitched up. I bitched up because he came in there and was just like, what did you say to me? I was like, I said, please leave, which is nowhere near what I fucking said. But I was like, please leave. He was like, I didn't hear please. Shit. That's when I was just like, okay, shit's getting a little out of hand here over a fucking quick ad, you know? So I was just like, all right. Yeah, that's when I kind of like, my testicles dropped a little bit there. I was just like, okay, I'm going to need you to leave. And he was just like, this is fucking bullshit. That was like his favorite fucking line. This is fucking bullshit, Finally, he fucking left, man. But like, that was like one of the rare times I fucking bitched up at fucking Blockbuster. Usually I'll stand toe to toe with these fucking customers. Like I almost, oh god, here's one I didn't have written down. But one time, now here's a fucking scam people used to do with Blockbuster. Now, if anybody remembers Blockbuster, when you'd walk into the doors, there was usually one door, then that little vestibule, then another door, and when the door shut behind you, that's it. You had to go all the way around to get out. Well, a scam, or I wouldn't say scam, like a fucking ruse, I guess would be a better way to put it. A ruse that people like do, like right when you come to the entrance door, that's where we kept the brand new movies. Like the brand new shit. Not the used shit, the brand new shit. So, the ruse that people would do is, like a driver would come and they'd drop off a person. That person would come in and they'd grab like all the expensive movies they can, like the 22, 24.99 movies, shit like that. And what they do, they'd wait for that entrance door to open again, and they'd book it out the entrance door, hop into their car, and drive off. That was the fucking ruse they did. So one night we saw this guy, and like all of a sudden he came in and just grabbed like fucking 8 movies right away, didn't even look at them. So we're just like, all right, that's suspicious because you didn't even look at what the fuck you got. So my assistant manager, Brenda, was just like, all right, let's go stand by the door, make sure he doesn't run for it. I was like, right on. So we're standing by the door, just chilling. We're not like fucking like staring at him or anything, but we're just making sure, nothing comes by the door and everything like that. He's still carrying like these fucking 8 movies, acting like he's looking around and shit. He takes the 8 movies up to the counter. And he puts them down, and he's like, you know what? Never mind, because y'all acting like I'm stealing shit. And I'm fucking, nobody said anything, dude. That's what gave yourself away right there. Is that you're like, y'all acting like I'm stealing stuff. I'm like, nobody said a fucking word. You just gave yourself away there, pal. But anyway, he puts the movies on the counter. He's like, never mind, I don't want these. Y'all acting like I'm stealing stuff. And we're like, have a great night. And he was like, you know what? Fuck y'all. And like, again, it was one of those nights where he just snapped at me. I was like, fuck me. Oh, no, I don't think so. And I started walking around the counter, and Brenda's like, no. She grabs my arm. She's like, no, let him go. I was like, okay. I had to catch myself there for a second because this guy was way bigger. But I was just like, what the fuck? Why are you going to get mad at me because you were trying to steal from us? That's what fucking like triggered me about that whole situation is that like we're standing there trying to protect our shit. Because we know this ruse is about to happen, And then he comes around the counter like, never mind, y'all acting like I'm going to steal some. You know what? Fuck y'all. I was like, fuck me? Oh, no. And so, in another customer thing here, oh, my God, this one's great. So, me and Donnie, who I mentioned earlier, Donnie was like my right-hand dude. This was one of those rare nights where like everybody was chill. It was Easter. It was Easter Sunday. Me and Donnie were closing. One of those rare nights where like people would come up to the counter. I'm like, I'm sorry, but you have a $21 late charge. And they're just like, oh my God, let me take care of that. And I'm like, okay. Because usually these people freak out over a $4 late charge. Here it is, $21. They're like, oh my God, let me take care of that right now. I'm like, okay. One of those rare nights, man. Nobody's fucking flipping shit or anything like that. Like, it was just a rare chill night, And Donnie, we got shit under control, man. The store's ready to be closed, man. We're good, man. Until this one guy came up. Now, when you worked with me as manager, I was very, very fucking easy to work with as manager. Very fucking easy. All you had to do was do three things. One, make sure people respect the line. Don't let people cut the line. You know, don't let them fucking walk in front of the line trying to get, no, just make them stand where it says, please wait for next cashier. We're good to go. The other thing is, try and take care of the problem before you have to call me. If it's something that you absolutely can't take care of, call me over. Okay? And three, don't send me a fucking idiot. If you send me over one of your idiots that fucking you couldn't take care of, I'm going to be pissed. That's it. Those are the only three things you had to do. Other than that, fucking let's have a good shift, man. So Donnie knew this. Donnie knew what was up. So we're working, and it's almost getting time to close, man. Like I said, rare night. Nobody's fucking flipping shit. Hey, do you have a copy of this? Sorry, we're all out. That's okay. I'll come back tomorrow. Like, fuck. I'm like, what the hell's going on? So this guy comes up, and he's not in my line. He's like standing in front of it, waiting for me. And I look at Donnie, and Donnie looks at the guy, and he looks back at me, and I just stare at him, and he's like, he kind of gives me that nod, like, I got you. And he looks at the guy, he's like, excuse me, sir, but I'm going to need you to step back towards the wait sign there. And he looks at Donnie, he's like, I'm waiting for him. Donnie looked at me, and I was like, no. I shook my head like, no. Donnie nodded at me. He was like, sir, I understand that, but if I can just get you to step back there or anything. He was just like, I told you I'm waiting for him. Donnie just looked at me again, and I was like, no. And Donnie just kind of realized, because Donnie was a little ghetto too, but Donnie was real chill. So he's like, sir, I understand that, but I just need you to step in line right here. He was just like, man, you speak when spoken to. Man, I pay your check. Donnie looked at me. I gave him a thumbs up. Because I was just like, oh no, you ain't coming in here talking to us like that. And shit. So Donnie just fucking goes off, man. He was like, I was just trying to get you. You don't tell me. Fuck. Like I let him go for a minute. And then finally, like it got a little too real. Because Donnie was getting a little too ghetto. So I finally had to calm him down. I was like, Donnie, stop. I was like, here, go to the back. But then it dawned on me, for him to go to the back, he had to walk past this customer. And I was like, oh, shit. So I was like, here. And I hand him the keys. I was like, Donnie, go to the back and calm down. He walks past the customer, and he bucks at the customer. And he bucks at him. He's like, fucking faggot. I was like, Donnie, get to the back. And I was like, you, get out. We're not renting to you. And I'll be damned if he didn't stand at the counter and wait to be checked out. I was like, are you shitting me? You seriously tell my employee I fucking speak when spoken to and that you pay his check and you think I'm going to wait on you? Well, I did wait on him. Because it was just easier than fucking start another fucking argument and shit. And so I checked the guy out. I put a note on his account that he's never allowed to come back in here again. And Donnie came back out because he was looking at the cameras in the back. So he came back out. He was just like, I'm sorry, Will. I was like, don't be sorry. You're good. He was like, Will, I was going to hit him. I was like, I figured. He was like, I was going to hit him, but I knew he was going to fall into that popcorn and then we'd have to clean it up. I was just like, it'd been cool. He was like, plus I didn't want to get fired. I was like, Donnie, those cameras don't have sound. I would have told everybody that he called you the N-word and fucking you hit him. You would have got off scot-free. He was like, damn, I wish I would have did it then. Donnie was probably, out of all the employees that I worked with, Donnie was one of my favorites. That and there was another dude too. I can't remember, but Donnie was one of them. And this one is actually in my book. So if you don't have a copy of my book, then here's this story right here. But this is one of the most bizarre customer interactions I have ever fucking had. Ever. And not just at Blockbuster. I think ever. And I've worked at some places, man, let me tell you. So, I'm working. And, people have the movie pass. And what the movie pass was, you pay X price a month for 2 or 3 movies at a time. And you can come in and change them out as much as you want. People would burn these movies. We had this one kid that would come in literally at noon, and he'd be back at 12:45 getting 2 more. Like, no way you watch these movies. You're burning them. You know, we all knew. So, I mean, but you're paying your fucking $19.99 a month or $27.99 a month. So, fucking, you know, what are we to do? So, with that Movie Pass, you tend to see a lot of regulars and shit. So, there was this couple that came in. I want to say they were like college kids, you know? It was a guy and a girl, and they always came in together, you know, always used their Movie Pass and shit like that, you know? So, I didn't know their names, but like I knew of them, you know, and shit. So, one night I'm working, it was me and this girl, Judy, we had. And they came in, and he came in without his girlfriend. And I was just like, oh, the girlfriend didn't come with you tonight? And he looks at me, he was like, no, she's not feeling too good, so she's at home being lazy. And I was like, oh, okay, right on, you know, that's cool. Well, let me know if you need any help. And he's like, will do, you know, and I walk away. So I go back up front because I'm looking at something on the computer. All of a sudden, a random girl, like, you'd probably have to see it, but like, it was the register, then like where all the candy is, and then behind there, okay? So there was the girl behind all the candy, like, you know, I kind of catch her in my eyesight, and I look up, and I was like, yes, can I help you? And she looked at me like fucking, like, trying to take my fucking soul. And she looked at me dead in the eyes, and she was like, you don't like my shoes? And I'm looking like, what the fuck? I'm looking behind me like, is she talking to me? I was like, am I not supposed to? And she just kind of gave me this look like, mm-hmm, and walked away. I'm like, what the fuck was that about, man? Like, okay, you know? So the regular that came in, checked him out. He's on the way out the door. All right. The girl and her significant other, I guess, they come up to the counter. They're not even renting anything. They're buying 2 pints of Ben and Jerry's. Now, let me stress this. At this time, it's like, what, 2007. So a pint of Ben and Jerry's was like at the grocery store, fucking like $3, maybe $3.50 at the time, you know. Whereas at Blockbuster, they were a little bit more. Like with tax, they were like $4.96. You know, we got a lot of voids for that. You know, so it got to the point that whenever somebody bought Ben and Jerry ice cream, I had to tell them the price before I even scanned it. You know, so people come up with Ben and Jerry. I'm like, listen, before I scan this, I gotta let you know this is $4.96 with tax. And they're like, oh no, never mind. Let me put that back. You know, and so forth. So this weird girl and her boyfriend come up to the counter, and I'm like, you know, hey, you know, they have 2 pints of Ben and Jerry. And I was like, oh, okay, just so you guys know, before I scan these, I gotta let you know these are $4.96 a piece, you know, after tax. The guy looks at me, he was like, yeah, that's why we're buying them. I'm like, okay, all right, fair enough. So I scan them, they pay, I put them in a bag. I was like, there you guys go. You guys have a good night. The guy walks out the door, and the girl is like dragging her feet behind him. And like, I'm kind of like looking at him out of the corner of my eye. You know, like, what the fuck, man? Like, what is going on here? As she's walking out the door, she like yells at me, like, at least I don't buy my shoes at Walmart, and walks out. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So I'm like, okay, what the fuck? So I go over to Judy, who's like straightening up the drama section. So I go over to drama. I was like, Judy, you're not going to fucking believe what just happened. She's like, what? And I tell her what fucking happened. She was like, oh, she thinks you were talking about her. I'm like, what the fuck you mean she thinks I was talking about her? She was like, she heard you talking to that guy earlier. I'm like, yeah, and? She was like, she thinks you were talking about her. I overheard her say it. I was like, I was talking to him about his girlfriend home being sick. Where did she get her fucking shoes from? She was like, I don't know. I just overheard her say that she thought you were talking about her. I'm like, this is fucking nuts, man. You know, it was one of the weirdest fucking things ever. I mean, yes, I was wearing shoes from Walmart, but that's besides the fucking point. You know? It was just one of the, like, how do you just go up to somebody and it was just like, you don't like my shoes? Like, what the fuck? You know, like, it was just so fucking weird. All right. And the final story I want to tell you guys here is how I quit. And this is how I quit Blockbuster. Okay? So I already quit once. And that was because, like, I was in high school at the time and I really couldn't do the high school job thing. Because, like, they'd want me home at, like, fucking midnight, and then I'd have to get up at school for 5 and shit. It was not a life I really liked living. And they're like, well, Will, you can't work during the days, you can't work night, when can you wear? I'm like, you do realize that when you hired me, you were putting me on 5 to 10? You do realize that, right? But they tend to forget about that, or forgot about that. Anyway, so I eventually came back, worked my way up to shift lead. Now, when you close a store, there's a certain list of shit that you need to get done. You got to straighten the aisles. You got to fucking count the money. You got to fucking do this. You got to do that. You got to get the returns out, as many as you can, so forth and so forth. Well, this is one of those nights, and they want you out at a certain time. So we close at fucking 1. They want you out by 1:30. Anything after that, they're going to start getting pissy. So looking at the clock and everything, I'm like, all right, we're going to have time for this, okay. So the one thing that was going to suffer this night was vacuuming. I got a good portion of the fucking vacuuming done, but not all of it. Everything else was done. Movie straightening, all that was done. Returns were done, all that shit. Now, whenever I didn't get something done, I always left a note for whoever opened. I was like, fucking, to Brenda, we didn't get this done because of this reason. Sorry. Never heard anything about it. This was the one night I forgot to leave a note. So, I get most of the vacuuming done. I didn't get like this one portion done, but everything else got done, So I was a late owl at the time. I wouldn't go to bed until like fucking 4 a.m. So like I was getting up at like, I don't know, fucking noon, 1 o'clock, So I get a call at like 10 a.m. It's my boss from Blockbuster. And I'm like, hello? And she's like, Will. I'm like, yeah. She was like, how come you didn't vacuum last night? I was like, oh, shit, I did. I got most of it. I just didn't get the middle floor right there. I was going to leave a note, but I forgot and everything. She was like, well, you need to start vacuuming more and everything. You need to start doing your job. Click. And I just stared at the phone. And I'm like, are you fucking for real, man? Like, fucking, I do everything. You know what? So I call my mom and I tell her what happened and shit. And I was like, I think I might quit. She was like, well, if you think you need to quit, quit. And I was like, all right, click. And I hung up. I was like, yeah, fuck it. You know what? I'm done. I'm not going to keep having her talk to me this way and shit, So I get all my shirts, or most of the shirts, because you got to turn in your shirts when you quit. So I get all my shirts. I get my keys, because I had store keys. And another fun fact is you had to return any movies that you had checked out, which mine was The Last Mimsy, which was a horrible fucking movie. But so I'm walking up there. I'm walking up there with a fucking purpose, man. So I got all my shirts in a bag and shit. So I walked to the door, and we had this kid that worked with us, Ariel. It was a guy, on top of all that. Kid named Ariel. And I've done it to him a few times. So there was a couple times where I was like, you know what, Ariel? I quit, and I'd hand him the keys, and I would just walk out the door, and he's like, what the fuck? And I'd come back like, I got you and shit. But this time, man, he thought I was joking and shit. So I walked through the door, and I throw my keys across the counter, and I was like, you make sure she gets these. And he's like, at first he's laughing, and he's like, hi, and he's like, oh shit, something's wrong here. And I go behind the counter, and I take all my shirts, and I dump them in the trash can, and I throw the fucking movie I had checked out across the counter. I was like, y'all make sure that gets checked out. I'm out. And I fucking left. That's how I quit. It was legend for a while. Apparently they watched it on camera a couple times, because like I just got tired of fucking being talked to like that. Like I did fucking everything else except for that one piece of vacuuming, and you're going to call and yell at me about it. Any other time I leave a note, and I never get calls like that and shit, but this was the one time that I didn't leave a note, and that's what ended my run with Blockbuster, even though it's a story you didn't ask for. So yeah, that was this edition of Stories No One Asked For. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully next week I should have good old Nick on from the Three-Way Dance Wrestling Podcast on. So thank you guys for listening. And until next week, guys, be breezy.